My name is Vera Collins. I'm 28 years old. 13 years ago on a stormy October night, my father looked me straight in the eye and said something I'll never forget. Get out. I don't need a sick daughter like you. I was 15, standing in the rain, soaking wet with nowhere to go. The reason my younger sister told a lie. Not a misunderstanding. Not some rumor that got out of hand. A calculated lie, one she knew my parents would believe. And they did. Just like that, I was erased. 3 hours later, the police called them from the hospital. I had been hit by a car. When my father walked into the hospital room and saw who was sitting beside my bed, his hands wouldn't stop shaking. You can't be here," he stammered. "How did you—" The woman sitting beside me was Dr. Eleanor Bennett, one of the most respected professors in the state. She had found me lying on the side of the road that night and saved my life. That night changed everything. Last month, I stood on stage at my sister's graduation ceremony as the keynote speaker. My parents were sitting in the audience. They had absolutely no idea I was coming. Before we continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories like these. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I won't miss a single comment. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I learned very early that in our house, Lily's tears were always louder than my achievements. When I was 11 years old, I won first place at the regional science fair. My project on water filtration systems beat more than 40 other students from different schools. I was so proud I could barely contain it. I ran all the way home with the blue ribbon clutched tightly in my hand. I burst through the front door and found my mom standing in the kitchen. "I won," I shouted. She turned, smiled, and pulled me into a quick hug. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." For a moment, I thought she might actually want to hear about the project. Then Lily walked in from dance practice. She was 8 years old, her face red and streaked with tears. "I messed up my pirouette," she cried. Everyone laughed at me. My mom's arms left me immediately. She knelt down beside Lily and pulled her into a hug. "Oh, baby, it's okay. You'll do better next time." I stood there holding my ribbon. Nobody asked to see it. That was the pattern in our house. Lily needed more attention. Lily was sensitive. Lily required careful handling. So I learned to celebrate quietly, to need less, to take up less space. By the time I was 14, I had stopped showing them my report cards. Straight A's didn't compete with Lily's B- drama. Then I got accepted into a prestigious summer science camp. Full scholarship. 2 weeks studying environmental science with actual researchers. I was thrilled. Dad glanced up from his phone and said, "That's nice, Vera." Then Lily burst into tears. "Why does she get to go away? That's not fair." Mom squeezed Lily's shoulder. "Vera, maybe you could skip it this year. Your sister needs— I need you here." Lily finished. So I didn't go. They said it was about family unity, about being understanding, about being the bigger person. And in our house, being the bigger person always meant the same thing. It meant giving up whatever mattered to me. What follows is a blend of pieces of reality and some fictional elements. Perhaps you'll recognize something familiar, but if you don't find anything striking today, that's perfectly fine. Take care of yourself. Take a few deep breaths, and we'll meet again in another story. I learned to be small, quiet, undemanding. It seemed easier that way. If I didn't argue, didn't defend myself too loudly, didn't insist on being heard, things stayed calmer in our house, at least on the surface. But the breaking point was already coming. I just didn't know it yet. And I definitely didn't know it would arrive in the middle of a storm. The lying started small. My sister Lily was 12 by then, and she had developed a habit of borrowing my things without asking. A sweater, a notebook, sometimes a pair of earrings I had saved up for months to buy. When I mentioned it very gently, always gently, she would deny it instantly. I never touched your sweater. Even when the sweater was literally sitting on her bed. If I pointed that out, Mom would sigh from across the room. Vera don't start fights. So I stopped mentioning it. Then one morning, money went missing from Mom's wallet. $50. Mom noticed it when she was paying for groceries later that afternoon, and suddenly the entire house was tense. Everyone gathered in the living room while Mom stood there holding her purse. I know I had it this morning, she said. Lily spoke up immediately. I saw Vera near your purse before school. I hadn't been. I had left early that day to study in the library before my chemistry quiz. But the moment Lily said it, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Dad called me into his study that evening. He closed the door behind me. Did you take money from your mother? He asked. No, I said. Lily says you did. Lily's lying. His jaw tightened instantly. Don't accuse your sister. But I didn't take it. Enough. His voice cut through mine like a blade. I'm disappointed in you, Vera. I thought you were better than this. That was the end of the conversation. I lost my phone for a month, and the science camp opportunity they had promised I could apply for again the following summer disappeared. We can't trust you with independence right now, Mom said calmly. Lily stood on the staircase while this entire discussion happened, watching. When our parents weren't looking, she smiled at me. A small smile, satisfied. That stolen $50 had just been a test. Lily was learning something important. She could get away with anything, and once she realized that the pattern escalated. A broken vase in the living room. My fault. A failed math test Lily hadn't studied for. Apparently, I should have helped her more. A rumor at school that Lily cheated on a quiz. According to her, I must have started it. Every time the story ended the same way. Her tears. Their belief. My punishment. Eventually, I stopped defending myself. What was the point they believed her tears over my truth every single time? By the time I turned 15, I felt like a ghost in my own house. Present. But invisible. Except when they needed someone to blame. So I started spending less time there. I stayed late at school. I studied at the library. I volunteered to help teachers organize labs after class. Anywhere felt better than home. I told myself I just needed to survive until college. 2 more years. Just 2 more years and I'd be free. I could make it 2 more years. At least that's what I believed. I was wrong. I thought I could make it 2 more years. I was wrong. October arrived during my junior year, and that week something felt different. Heavier somehow, like the air before a storm when everything goes strangely quiet. There was a boy at school named Daniel Harper. He was in my AP chemistry class. Nice guy. Friendly. Completely hopeless when it came to balancing chemical equations. He had asked me for help a few times, and I'd stayed after class to explain stoichiometry problems to him. That was all. It was homework help. Nothing more. But my sister Lily had a crush on him. Not just a small crush. The kind that takes over your entire personality. She walked past my classroom between periods just to catch a glimpse of him. She practiced writing Lily Collins Harper in the margins of her notebook like she was already planning their future. I knew because I'd seen it once when I went into her room to return a pen she'd borrowed from me. On Tuesday afternoon, Daniel caught me at my locker. Hey, he said, leaning casually against the metal door. Thanks for the help yesterday. You seriously saved me. I would have failed that homework. I smiled. No problem. He hesitated for a second, then said, maybe we could study together sometime before the midterm. Sure, I said. The library works. Cool, he replied, grinning before heading down the hallway. I shut my locker and turned around, and that's when I saw Lily. She was standing about 20 feet away staring at us. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. At dinner that night, she barely spoke. She pushed her food around her plate while Mom kept glancing at her with concern. Are you feeling okay? Mom asked. Lily shrugged. I'm fine. But she clearly wasn't. And that silence should have warned me, because with Lily, silence was always more dangerous than tears. On Thursday, something unexpected happened. We had a visiting lecturer in my biology class, Dr. Eleanor Bennett from State University. She was speaking about research on educational equity and opportunities for underprivileged students. Most of the class barely listened, but I did. After the lecture ended, I stayed behind to ask a few questions about her research. She seemed surprised, then impressed. You have a curious mind, she said, handing me a small business card. Don't let anyone dim that light. I smiled and thanked her, slipping the card into my backpack. At the time, it just felt like a nice conversation. I had no idea she would eventually save my life. A week later, the weather warnings started. That Friday morning, the news was already talking about a major storm moving toward the city. By afternoon, people were stocking up on groceries, filling gas tanks, boarding up windows. The kind of storm everyone prepares for. Lily still wasn't talking to me. She barely even looked in my direction. I remember thinking maybe she'd just finally gotten tired of blaming me for things. Maybe the weekend would be quiet. Friday evening, the rain started around 6. We sat down for dinner while weather alerts buzzed repeatedly on Dad's phone. Flood warnings, wind advisories, emergency updates flashing across the screen. Everyone seemed tense. Lily picked at her pasta without eating much. I could feel her watching me from across the table. Whenever I glanced up, she quickly looked away. After dinner, I went upstairs to my room and started working on my English assignment. Outside, the wind was growing stronger. Rain slammed against the windows in loud, uneven bursts. The kind of storm that makes you grateful to be safe inside. Around 8 o'clock, I heard crying downstairs. Lily. Loud. Dramatic. The kind of sobbing that filled the entire house. I froze at my desk and set down my pen. Mom's voice drifted up the stairs. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Talk to me. More crying. I waited, trying to guess what had happened. Maybe she twisted her ankle. Maybe she failed another test. Then Dad's voice cut through the noise. Sharp. Angry. Vera, get down here now. My stomach dropped instantly. Slowly, I stood up and walked toward the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the living room, Lily was curled up on the couch with her face buried in Mom's shoulder. Mom was stroking her hair gently, whispering to her. Dad stood near the fireplace with his arms crossed, his expression dark. And the moment I stepped into the room, I knew something terrible had just started. What's going on? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Lily slowly lifted her head from Mom's shoulder. Her eyes were swollen and wet with tears. For a brief moment, less than a second, I saw something behind them, something cold. Then it disappeared. Tell her what you told us, Dad said. His voice was ice. Lily's lower lip trembled. Why do you hate me so much? She whispered. What? I stepped closer, confused. I don't hate you. Then why? She sobbed. Have you been spreading rumors about me at school? My mind went blank. What rumors about me and Daniel? She cried. About me cheating on that quiz. About me being a liar. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. Lily, I never don't lie to her. Mom said quietly. I stared at her. I didn't even know what she meant yet, but somehow I could already feel everything slipping out of control. I didn't spread any rumors, I said, my voice shaking. I honestly don't know what you're talking about. Lily pulled out her phone, her hands trembling dramatically. Then explain this. She showed Mom the screen, a screenshot of a group chat. Messages supposedly sent from my account. Cruel messages about Lily calling her attention-seeking, accusing her of cheating, even mocking her crush on Daniel. Things I would never say. But there it was. My name. My profile picture. I didn't write those, I said quickly. Someone must have used my account. Stop. Dad snapped, his voice cracking like thunder. Just stop lying. I'm not lying. And Daniel, Lily added quietly, as if she had just remembered something painful. You knew I liked him, but you've been flirting with him, trying to make me look stupid. He asked me for help with chemistry, I said. That's all? That's not all, Lily shouted. You've been staying after class with him. Meeting him at the library. His friend told me he thinks you're pretty. We're study partners. You tried to steal him from me. Lily suddenly stood up from the couch. And last week, she continued, voice trembling. You pushed me on the stairs. She pulled up her sleeve. A dark purple bruise marked her forearm. I stared at it, stunned. I never touched you. You did, Lily said, looking at Mom. I didn't want to say anything before because I thought maybe she was just stressed. Mom slowly stood up and stepped between us. Vera, she said quietly, this is serious. If you hurt your sister, I didn't. Then how did she get that bruise? Dad demanded. I don't know, I said helplessly. Maybe she did it herself. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Lily's eyes widened. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You think I'd hurt myself just to frame you? She choked. Yes, I shouted before I could stop myself. Yes, because you do this. You lie. You've been lying about me for years. Dad took a step toward me. Is this true? He asked Lily softly. Has your sister been bullying you? No, I said quickly. God, no. Please just listen to me. I've heard enough. Dad slammed his fist against the mantel. I've heard enough of your excuses. They're not excuses, I said desperately. Please just let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Mom said quietly. Her voice was calm, disappointed. I thought we raised you better than this. Lily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. The perfect victim. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for just a second she looked back at me. Her eyes were completely dry. Cold. Calculating. You're lying, I whispered. I'm not, she said calmly. You are. You made all of this up. Vera, Mom started. She's lying, I said, turning to Dad. Please, you have to believe me. I would never hurt her. I would never spread rumors. She's doing this because she's jealous. Because Daniel doesn't like her enough. Dad's voice went completely flat. I don't want to hear another word from you. He stared at me like he was looking at a stranger. You're sick, he said quietly. Something is wrong with you. The word hit me like a slap. Sick. I'm not. You need help, he continued coldly. Professional help. And in that moment, standing in my own living room surrounded by my family, I realized something that terrified me more than the accusations. They truly believed her. Every word. But right now, Dad said, pointing toward the door, I need you out of my sight. Outside, the rain was pounding against the windows. Thunder shook the house like something enormous was crashing into the roof. Dad, I said weakly, it's storming. I don't care. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. His face twisted with disgust. Get out. I don't need a sick daughter like you in this house. The words carved into me. Sick daughter. Like I was something diseased. Something broken. Something wrong. I looked at Mom silently, begging her to step in. To say something. To tell him this was insane. She didn't. She just kept her arm around Lily, holding her close like she was the one who needed protecting. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door. The zipper kept slipping between my fingers because they wouldn't stop trembling. Then the door slammed behind me. Through the living room window, I could see Lily watching me leave. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling. The rain hit me like a wall. Cold. Angry. Relentless. Within seconds, I was completely soaked. Water ran down my face and into my eyes as the wind whipped my hair across my mouth. I stood on the porch for a moment, waiting. Maybe Dad would open the door again. Maybe he would come outside and say he'd overreacted. Maybe he would tell me to come back inside. The door stayed closed. So I started walking. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from that house. Away from Lily's lies. Away from parents who had just decided I was something they didn't want. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Low battery. 8%. I pulled it out and tried calling my friend Hannah. No answer. Then Claire. Straight to voicemail. It was Friday night. Everyone was home with their families. Safe, dry, warm. Not me. The wind pushed against me as rain poured down in sheets so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. Cars rushed past, spraying dirty water from the road. None of them slowed down. I headed toward the public library. Maybe I could wait out the storm there. But when I finally reached the building, the windows were dark. Locked. Closed. The nearest bus station was 2 miles away. If I could make it there, maybe I could sit inside until morning and figure out what to do. So I kept walking. Every step felt heavier than the last. My shoes were soaked through water, squishing loudly with every step. My jacket clung to my skin like ice. I was so cold my teeth started chattering. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning tore across the sky in jagged flashes. For a moment I thought about turning around, about going back and knocking on the door, begging them to let me come home. But the look on Dad's face stopped me. That disgust. I couldn't forget it. Sick daughter. Maybe he was right. Maybe something really was wrong with me. Why else would my own family choose Lily over me every single time the bus station was still about a mile away when the storm grew worse? The wind howled louder. Rain came down harder. And that's when it happened. I was crossing an intersection. The light was green, I'm sure it was, but the rain was so heavy I could barely see the road. Suddenly headlights appeared. Bright. Blinding. A horn blared. Tires screeched. I tried to jump back. I wasn't fast enough. The impact threw me sideways. My body slammed into the hood of the car before crashing onto the wet pavement. My head hit the asphalt. Pain exploded through my skull, white-hot and overwhelming. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Rain poured into my mouth and eyes as the world spun sideways. I heard a car door slam, footsteps splashing through water. "Oh my God," a woman's voice said in panic. "Oh my God." Hands touched my shoulder, careful and steady. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" I tried to answer. Nothing came out. "Don't move," she said quickly. "Just stay still. I'm calling 911. Her voice was shaking, but her hands were gentle. "Stay with me, okay? What's your name?" I blinked, trying to focus. Her face was blurry through the rain. Dark hair stuck to her cheeks as water ran down her forehead. Something about her looked familiar. Had I seen her before? My parents? I managed to whisper. "Your parents?" she asked quickly. "Okay. What's their number? I'll call them." "They don't." I coughed, the taste of blood filling my mouth. My chest burned with every breath. "They don't want me." The woman froze. "What?" she asked softly. "They kicked me out," I whispered. The words felt heavy, like they barely wanted to come out of my mouth. "Said I'm sick. Said they don't want me anymore." For a moment, she just stared at me while the rain poured down between us. Something changed in her expression. At first, it looked like confusion, then something else. Recognition, maybe. Or horror. "You're going to be okay?" she said quickly, though her voice trembled. "I promise. You're going to be okay." In the distance, I heard sirens getting closer. Red and blue lights flickered somewhere beyond the rain. The woman's face was the last thing I saw before everything went black. I don't remember the ambulance. I don't remember arriving at the hospital. My first clear memory is sound. Beeping machines, the constant buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, the sharp smell of antiseptic, and a voice. The same woman from the accident. "She has a severe concussion," she was saying, Possible internal bleeding. You need to keep her for observation. I tried to open my eyes. They felt too heavy. Everything hurt. I'm staying. The woman continued, her voice firmer now, steadier than before. I'm not leaving her alone. Another voice spoke, probably a nurse. Ma'am, are you family? No, she replied. I'm the one who hit her with my car. A pause. I'm staying until her parents arrive. Time passed after that, though I couldn't tell how much. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Voices came and went around me, fading in and out like waves. At some point, I heard new voices. Familiar ones. We're Vera Collins's parents. Dad. His voice sounded strained. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the woman from the accident, replied. Her tone had changed. It was colder now. Controlled. Professional. I'm Dr. Eleanor Bennett. There was a pause. You're a professor at State University, Mom said slowly. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies, Dr. Bennett corrected calmly. Then she added, her voice sharp as glass. And I'm the one who hit your daughter with my car tonight. It was an accident, Dad said quickly. We don't blame you. She ran across the road in the middle of a storm, he continued. She was soaking wet. Alone. At night. Dr. Bennett's voice rose slightly. She was 15 years old? Silence followed. Why was she out there? No one answered. Mr. Collins, Dr. Bennett said again, slower this time. I asked you a question. Dad cleared his throat. There was a family situation, a discipline issue. A discipline issue, Dr. Bennett repeated quietly. Then her voice hardened. What kind of discipline issue involves putting a child out in the middle of a storm? It wasn't like that, Mom said quickly. Then, what was it like? Her footsteps moved closer to my bed. Because your daughter told me something before she lost consciousness, Dr. Bennett continued. She said her parents didn't want her anymore. She said you told her she was sick. The room went completely silent. You're lying. Lily's voice. Small. Frightened. Vera made that up, she said quickly. She was barely conscious. Dr. Bennett didn't hesitate. She wasn't making anything up. I heard footsteps moving away from the bed. Now I need to speak with a social worker. That won't be necessary, Dad said, trying to sound authoritative. We're her parents. We'll handle this. With all due respect, Sir, Dr. Bennett replied coldly. You've handled it enough. This is a private family matter, Mom added. The moment you sent a minor into a storm, Doctor, Bennett said sharply, it stopped being private. Her footsteps came back toward the bed. Then I felt something warm. Her hand wrapped gently around mine. I'm not leaving, she said quietly. Not until I know she's safe. Another voice spoke nearby. A man this time. Mr. Collins, we need to ask you some questions. A police officer. We haven't done anything wrong, Mom said quickly. But this time her voice was shaking. Your daughter was hit by a car at 11 p.m. during a major storm, the police officer said firmly. She's 15 years old. We need to understand why she wasn't home. I tried to open my eyes. My eyelids fluttered weakly. Everything was blurry shapes, moving shadows shifting across the bright hospital lights. I could barely focus, but I recognized the outline of my father standing near the foot of the bed, and behind him, Lily. Dr. Eleanor Bennett noticed immediately. She's waking up, she said sharply. Everyone out. Now. She's our daughter, Dad started. And I'm the doctor, responsible for her care. Dr. Bennett interrupted, her voice firm. Out. There was a brief pause, then footsteps. Voices fading. The door closing. Silence. I felt Dr. Bennett lean closer to the bed. Her hand wrapped gently around mine and gave it a reassuring squeeze. You're safe now, she whispered. Her voice was calm. Certain. I promise you're safe. I wanted to believe her. But safe was a strange word to me. I hadn't felt safe in years. My eyes drifted closed again, and I let the darkness take me. When I woke up again, 3 days had passed. My parents were gone. Dr. Bennett was still there. She had kept her promise. She hadn't left me alone. The concussion had been severe, the nurses told me later. I spent 4 days in the hospital while doctors monitored me for internal bleeding, and every day Dr. Bennett came back. She brought books, sat beside my bed, talked to me about college programs, science research, and universities I had only ever seen online, about possibilities, about futures I had never imagined were meant for someone like me. My parents came once, just once. They brought a small bag of clothes and a stack of school assignments from my teachers. They stood awkwardly at the foot of my hospital bed like visitors who had walked into the wrong room. "We're glad you're okay," Mom said stiffly. Dad nodded. "You gave us quite a scare." Neither of them apologized, neither of them explained, and neither of them asked if I wanted to come home. Lily didn't come at all. On the 5th day, a social worker visited. Her name was Mrs. Carter, and she had kind eyes and a soft voice. She sat beside the bed and asked me questions about my home, my family, and what had happened the night of the storm. I told her everything. Lily's lies, my parents believing her. The moment Dad called me a sick daughter and told me to leave, Mrs. Carter listened carefully and took notes. When I finished, she looked at me thoughtfully. "Vera," she said gently, "you have options? You don't have to go back there?" The words stunned me. If I don't go back, where would I go? At that moment, there was a quiet knock at the door. Dr. Bennett stepped into the room. "She could stay with me," she said simply. I stared at her. "What temporary foster placement?" she explained, glancing at Mrs. Carter. "Until we figure out something permanent. If she wants." Then she added calmly, "I've already started the paperwork." "Why would you do that?" I asked. My voice cracked as the question came out. "You don't even know me." Dr. Bennett walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Her expression softened. "Because someone once did the same thing for me. When I was 17, my family kicked me out too. A teacher took me in. It changed my life." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're brilliant, Vera. You have potential most kids never even get the chance to discover." Her voice grew gentler. "Don't let anyone convince you that you're broken. Don't let anyone dim that light." I started crying. I couldn't stop. Dr. Bennett waited patiently until I finally caught my breath again. "I'll understand if you want to go home," she said softly. "But if you want something different, I'm here." And right there in that hospital room, I made a decision. I chose different. 6 months later, my life barely resembled the one I had before. Same name, different world. Dr. Bennett's house was quiet and warm, filled with bookshelves, green plants, and the soft sound of classical music playing somewhere in the background. She gave me the guest room and told me I could decorate it however I wanted. For the first time in my life, a space actually felt like mine. I transferred schools and started over. No one there knew about Lily. No one knew about my parents. No one knew about the girl who had been thrown out during a storm. I was just Vera Collins, a student, focused, curious, finally able to breathe. And Dr. Bennett Eleanor, as she insisted I call her, began showing me a world I had never even imagined existed. University life with Eleanor opened doors I had never even known existed. She took me to lectures on campus research symposiums filled with scholars debating education reform and dinners where professors discussed policy equity and social change over glasses of wine and stacks of academic papers. At first, I barely spoke. I mostly listened. But Eleanor never treated me like I didn't belong there. "Education is freedom," she used to say whenever we walked back from campus at night. "Knowledge is power. And once you have it, no one can take it away from you." So I threw myself into school. Straight A's weren't just grades anymore. They were proof. Proof that I wasn't sick. Proof that I wasn't broken. Proof that the person my father had described that night didn't actually exist. Eleanor also taught me practical things: how scholarships worked, how grant proposals were written, and how entire systems existed to help students who had nowhere else to go. Kids like me. Kids from difficult families. Kids who only needed one person to believe in them. "You're going to do something important someday," she told me once over dinner. It was a simple meal, pasta salad, a quiet evening that felt normal and safe. I can see it. Sometimes I thought about my old family. I wondered if Lily had ever admitted the truth. If Dad had ever regretted the words he threw at me that night. If Mom had ever questioned what really happened. But those thoughts became rarer with time. Most days I didn't think about them at all. Through old acquaintances and mutual friends, I heard bits and pieces. Lily was doing fine. Still the golden child. Still the center of attention. My parents had removed every photo of me from the house, as if I had never existed. At first that hurt. Then it didn't. Good, I eventually thought. Let them erase me. I'm building something better. By my senior year of high school, I already had a plan. College. Major in education policy. Build something that could help students who fell through the cracks of the system, kids whose families failed them the way mine had. I was going to turn my pain into purpose. College itself passed in a blur of late-night study sessions, research papers, internships, and slowly learning how to trust people again. I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university, thanks in part to Eleanor's glowing recommendation letter. I majored in education policy and social justice with a minor in psychology. I wanted to understand systems. Why some children received help while others disappeared into gaps, wide enough to swallow entire futures. During the summers, I interned at nonprofit organizations, grant writing foundations, youth advocacy programs, education reform groups. I learned how money moved through the system, how programs were funded, how ideas became real programs that actually changed lives. By the time I graduated summa cum laude, I finally understood something important. Compassion alone doesn't change systems. Strategy does. Eleanor cried during my graduation ceremony. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered as she hugged me. "So incredibly proud." Soon after graduation, I was hired as a research coordinator at the university's education department, the same university where Eleanor worked. Different building, professional distance, but we were still connected. When I turned 25, I had an idea: a scholarship program, specifically for students from unstable or abusive homes. Kids who had been kicked out. Kids who had been neglected. Kids who simply needed a second chance. I called it the Second Chance Scholarship. Not the most creative name I know, but it was clear. And it was honest. Eleanor helped me write the grant proposals. Together, we secured funding from 3 organizations and launched the program at one university as a small pilot. Then 2 universities joined. Then 5. By the time I was 27, the program had awarded over $200,000 in scholarships. 47 students had received support. 47 students who were still in school, still alive, still hopeful. Media outlets began noticing. Local newspapers, education journals, podcasts about social policy. I gave interviews and spoke at conferences, but whenever I told my story, I kept it vague. I would say something like, "A 15-year-old girl once heard that she didn't belong anywhere," but I never mentioned names, never mentioned my family. Then one afternoon, my colleague David Brooks knocked on my office door. "Vera," he said, stepping inside, "you're being considered for a keynote speech at a graduation ceremony." "Which university?" I asked. "Riverside State University." My stomach dropped. "That's..." I stopped and took a slow breath. "That's my sister's school." David blinked in surprise. "You have a sister?" "Not anymore," I said quietly. But yes, she graduates this spring. David pulled up a chair. Do you want me to decline on your behalf? I stared down at my desk. At the scholarship applications stacked neatly in front of me, 47 students, 47 second chances. What's the theme of the speech? I asked. Resilience and educational equity, David replied. President Harrison personally requested you. He says your work represents exactly what the ceremony should stand for. My work. The scholarship program that existed because one night my own parents had thrown me away. Because they had called me sick. I leaned back in my chair slowly, and for a moment I wondered if fate was giving me something I hadn't expected. Closure. Would I have creative control over my speech? I asked David. Complete control, he replied immediately. They just want you there. I leaned back in my chair thinking. I pictured Lily sitting in her cap and gown smiling for photos, probably telling her friends about her perfect family, her supportive parents, her life as an only child. Because as far as her world knew, that's exactly what she was. I imagined my parents sitting in the audience too, proud, applauding, completely convinced they had made the right decision 13 years ago. And I imagined myself stepping onto that stage, not for revenge, for closure. I need to talk to Eleanor, I told David finally. That evening at dinner, I explained everything to her. They have no idea who I've become, I said quietly. No idea I built the scholarship program. For all they know, I'm homeless. Or disappeared. Or maybe they think I died. Eleanor set down her fork slowly. What do you want to happen? She asked. I thought about the question carefully before answering. I want to close the chapter properly, I said. Not with anger. With truth. And if it hurts them, they hurt me first. I held her gaze. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because my story matters. Showing them who I became despite them. That's not cruel. It's honest. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then do it, she said softly. Do it on your terms. Walk onto that stage with your head held high and show them exactly who you are now. The next morning, I called David. Tell President Harrison I accept. I didn't see Lily in person before the ceremony, but social media makes ghosts very easy to find. She posted constantly, her entire senior year documented through carefully filtered photos and perfect captions, brunches with friends, study sessions that looked more like photo shoots, pictures of sunsets on campus lawns. Can't believe I'm graduating in 2 months, one caption read. So grateful for my parents who supported me every step of the way. #blessed #family first. The comments poured in. You're amazing, so proud of you. Your parents raised you right. I scrolled through her profile once. Just once. Morbid curiosity. There were no photos of me. No mention that she had ever had a sister. In Lily's version of reality, I had never existed. One post caught my attention. A photo of Lily sitting at a restaurant table with our parents. Wine glasses raised. All 3 of them smiling. Celebrating my graduation with the 2 best people in the world, the caption said. Love you, Mom and Dad. Dad looked older. Gray around his temples. Mom looked tired. But they both looked proud. Happy. I closed the app. Through a few old acquaintances, people I had known before the storm, I heard more. Lily was excited about graduation, a big ceremony. All her friends would be there. My parents were apparently planning a party afterward. The keynote speaker is supposed to be really good, someone mentioned in a group chat I was still accidentally part of. Some researcher who started a scholarship program. Should be inspiring, Lily replied a few minutes later. Ugh, those speeches are always boring. But whatever. It's my day. I actually laughed when I read that. Then I took a screenshot. Not out of revenge. Just proof. Proof that she had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. I wondered if she would recognize me. 13 years was a long time, I had changed, grown up, become someone completely different from the frightened 15-year-old she pushed out of that house. I guess we were about to find out. I spent 2 weeks writing the speech, drafting, rewriting, cutting paragraphs, adding new ones. I read it out loud to Eleanor at least a dozen times. Don't mention names, she advised. Tell the story. Let people connect the dots themselves. So that's exactly what I did. The speech began with statistics, educational inequity, students who fall through systemic cracks. But halfway through, the tone shifted. At 15 years old, I practiced saying in front of the mirror, I was told I didn't belong anywhere, that something was wrong with me, that I was too broken to keep. Each time I practiced, I watched my reflection carefully. Calm, composed, professional. No anger, no bitterness, just the truth. Because this speech wasn't about exposing my family, it was about reclaiming my story. But someone saw potential instead of problems. Someone looked at a scared 15-year-old girl lying in a hospital bed and decided she was worth saving. Someone gave me a second chance, and that changed everything. That was the heart of my speech. No tears, no anger, just truth. David handled the logistics, parking permits, security clearance credentials, and the printed program listing the keynote speaker Vera Collins, director of the Second Chance Scholarship Program. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, memories drifting in and out of my mind like shadows. Lily's voice, my father's words, sick daughter. My mother turning away without saying a single word. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Eleanor stepped inside carrying a mug of tea. She sat down on the edge of my bed like she had done 100 times before. Second thoughts, she asked gently. Just thoughts, I replied. She smiled slightly. You're not the girl they threw away, Vera. You're the woman who rebuilt her life. She handed me the mug. Remember that tomorrow. The tea was warm chamomile with honey. Will you be there? I asked quietly. Eleanor chuckled. Front row. Always. Morning arrived faster than I expected. I dressed carefully, a navy suit, professional but not stiff. Eleanor insisted I borrow her grandmother's pearl necklace, saying it brought confidence and luck. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. Confident, composed, successful. Nothing like the soaked 15-year-old girl who had once been told she was sick and unwanted. I took a deep breath. I was ready. The university campus was beautiful that morning. Old brick buildings, manicured lawns, graduates in caps and gowns everywhere posing for photos with their families. Laughter filled the air. Excitement buzzed through the crowd like electricity. Possibility? Hope. I arrived early and met President Harrison in his office. He greeted me warmly. Ms. Collins, we're honored to have you here today. Your work is extraordinary. Thank you, sir, I said. The students will be inspired. I'm sure of it, he replied. David then escorted me to the auditorium. Backstage was organized chaos, faculty adjusting their robes, staff testing microphones, graduates peeking through the curtains at the crowd filling the hall. I picked up a printed program and scanned the names of the graduating students. Then I saw it. Row 3. Lily Collins, Bachelor of Arts Communications. My heart began pounding against my ribs. You okay? David asked quietly. Yes, I said, folding the program closed. I'm ready. A few minutes later, Eleanor arrived backstage. She wore a beautiful emerald dress and looked impossibly proud. She pulled me into a tight hug. You've got this, she said. I know. Remember, head high, I replied with a smile. Truth first. No revenge, just honesty. She kissed my cheek and walked toward the front row. The auditorium slowly filled. I could hear hundreds of voices murmuring together, families chatting, friends laughing, programs rustling. Somewhere in that sea of people were my parents, probably sitting comfortably somewhere in the middle rows with a perfect view of the stage, excited to watch Lily graduate. Completely unaware of who the keynote speaker was, David had confirmed something interesting earlier. My name appeared in the program, but in small print. Most people rarely read the speaker bios carefully. They would discover it soon enough. President Harrison stepped backstage and touched my shoulder. 5 minutes, he said. You're on right after the opening remarks. I nodded, took a slow breath, smoothed the front of my suit. From behind the curtain, I could see the stage, the podium, the microphone, and hundreds of faces waiting in the dim auditorium lights. It was time. But before I tell you what happened when I stepped onto that stage, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where your own family doubted you but you eventually proved them wrong? If you have, you know exactly how heavy that moment feels, and how powerful it becomes when the truth finally stands on its own. Now, let's go back to that stage. This was the moment everything changed. President Harrison stepped up to the podium and the entire auditorium slowly quieted. Welcome graduates, families, and honored guests, he began. Today we celebrate achievement, resilience, and the boundless potential of our students. Applause filled the room. Cheers echoed from the rows of graduates. Our keynote speaker embodies these very values, he continued. She has dedicated her career to ensuring that every student, regardless of circumstance, has access to opportunity. He paused and smiled. Please welcome the director of the Second Chance Scholarship Program, Ms. Vera Collins. The auditorium erupted into polite applause. I stepped forward into the stage lights. The stage felt enormous. The podium stood in the center, the microphone waiting. Beyond the bright lights, hundreds of faces blurred together into a sea of caps and gowns. I walked calmly, measured steps, confident. My heels echoed softly against the wooden floor, and then I saw them. Row 3. Lily, cap and gown, honor cords around her neck. She was clapping, smiling, leaning slightly toward the girl beside her to whisper something. Then she looked up, saw me. Her hands froze mid-clap. Her smile collapsed. Confusion crossed her face first, then recognition, then shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Behind her, several rows back, I spotted my parents. Still clapping, still smiling politely. They hadn't looked closely yet. To them, I was just another speaker walking onto the stage. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. Lily was staring at me now, pale and frozen. One of her friends nudged her. You okay? The girl whispered. From the front row on stage right, Eleanor Bennett caught my eye. She gave me a small nod, encouraging, steady. I wrapped my hands around the edges of the podium. Good morning, I began. Thank you, President Harrison, for that generous introduction. My voice carried clearly through the speakers across the massive room. At that exact moment, Dad's head snapped upward. I saw him lean forward, slightly squinting, trying to place my voice. Mom's hand slowly moved to her chest. I smiled. Professional. Warm. It's an honor to be here today, I continued. And today, I want to talk about resilience, about what happens when life takes everything from you, and you have to find yourself again. The audience grew quiet, listening. Let me tell you about a 15-year-old girl, I said calmly. She was told she didn't belong anywhere, told that something was fundamentally wrong with her, told that she was too broken to keep. From the stage, I could clearly see Mom's hand gripping Dad's arm. One night, in the middle of a violent storm, that girl was forced to leave her home. She was told she wasn't wanted anymore. Uneasy whispers moved through the audience. She wandered through the rain for hours, I continued. No phone, no money, no place to go. She was eventually hit by a car. A few gasps echoed through the room. She nearly died. Lily had completely stopped moving. Her face had turned white. But someone stopped, I said. Someone helped. Someone looked at that girl and saw potential instead of problems. I turned slightly and gestured toward the front row. Dr. Eleanor Bennett. Eleanor smiled gently. That woman became my mentor, I said. My guide. My family in every way that matters. I paused. Let the silence settle. Then I said the words clearly. That 15-year-old girl was me. The entire auditorium went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad half rose from his seat before Mom pulled him back down again. Both of them stared at me in disbelief. Lily looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Students around her began whispering. Some pointed toward her. Her friends looked confused, concerned. I continued speaking calmly. I'm standing here today because Dr. Bennett refused to give up on me when others did. She taught me something important. Rejection isn't the end of a story. It can be the beginning of a new one. More whispers spread through the crowd. The Second Chance Scholarship Program was created because of that experience, I continued. It exists for students who have been told they aren't good enough. Students who have been abandoned, dismissed, or pushed aside. I looked directly at Lily, held her gaze. Because being rejected does not define who you are. What you choose to become afterward does. I turned back to the audience. Today, that program has helped 47 students stay in school. 47 students who might otherwise have disappeared. My voice remained steady, professional, clear. In the back of the room, someone whispered loudly enough to carry through the crowd. Is that really her family? I continued speaking, as if I hadn't heard it. Because the truth no longer needed to shout. It was already louder than any lie ever told. In the years after that storm, I learned something that changed the way I understand the word family. Family isn't always biology. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand beside you when everyone else walks away. From the stage, I saw Eleanor Bennett wipe a tear from the corner of her eye. She smiled at me the way she always did when she knew I had found the words I needed. I continued speaking. I also learned something else, I said, gripping the podium gently. You don't need everyone in the world to believe in you. You just need one person who looks past the accusations, past the rumors, past the lies. One person who sees who you really are. Across the room, Lily's face crumpled. She stared down at her hands, her shoulders shaking as her friends slowly stopped whispering and began looking at her with confusion. Connecting the dots. And I continued my voice steady, that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about building something meaningful despite them. My father's hands were trembling in his lap. He looked like he wanted to disappear. My mother was crying quietly, mascara running down her cheeks. So to the graduating class I finished, remember this. Your worth is not determined by who stays. It's determined by who you choose to become after people leave. The room fell silent for a moment. Then applause began. Slowly at first, then louder. Students stood. Faculty stood. Families stood. A full standing ovation rippled across the auditorium. But not everyone stood. My father remained seated, pale, covering his face with his hands. My mother stood clapping, weakly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Lily didn't move at all. She just stared at the floor. After the ceremony, everything unfolded quickly. My parents tried to apologize. Lily admitted the truth. They asked if we could fix things. But some things don't get repaired simply because someone finally admits what happened. I had already built a life. And that life didn't include them. I forgave them for my own peace. But I didn't return. That's a boundary. And boundaries matter. In the weeks that followed, my speech spread across social media faster than I expected. Someone in the audience had recorded it. Within days, it had tens of thousands of views, then hundreds of thousands. Messages flooded in. Students, parents, people who had lived through their own storms. Many of them wrote the same thing. I thought I was the only one. You're never the only one. The scholarship program grew faster than we had ever imagined. More universities partnered with us, more students applied, more lives changed. A year later, the Second Chance Scholarship was active in 10 universities and had helped over 80 students stay in school. 80 futures that might have been lost. That was never about revenge. It was about purpose, turning pain into something that actually helps someone else. Every once in a while, Lily still sends me a short message, a quiet apology. Thinking of you. I hope you're doing well. I read them. I don't respond. Not out of anger. Just because the chapter is closed. My father once sent one final email. We're proud of you even if we have no right to be. I never answered that one either. Some relationships belong in the past. And that's okay. Today, I'm 28 years old. The same age I was when I started telling this story to you. I work with students who remind me of the girl I used to be. Kids who think they've been thrown away. Kids who believe something must be wrong with them. I tell them the same thing Eleanor once told me. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not the problem. Sometimes the people who leave you simply weren't capable of loving you the way you deserved. That's their limitation, not yours. Eleanor is 60 now. I don't call her Dr. Bennett anymore. I call her Mom. Because family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. And she showed up for me every single day for 13 years. That's what family looks like. Every October 15th, the anniversary of that storm, I drive past the house where I grew up. I park across the street, look at the windows, look at the door. And I think about the 15-year-old girl who walked out of that house in the rain. She thought her life was over. She thought she was unwanted, broken, too much. But she survived. More than that, she built something beautiful out of the wreckage. There's something I've come to understand through all of this. Sometimes the hardest part of life isn't the moment you're rejected, it's deciding who you will become afterward. Being pushed away doesn't automatically break you, but it does force you to choose. You can carry the pain forward, or you can turn it into something that helps someone else survive their own storm. I chose the second path. And maybe you would too if you were standing where I once stood. So let me ask you something honestly. If you were in that situation, 15 years old, misunderstood, alone, what would you do next? Would you give up? Or would you build something better out of it? Stories like this matter because somewhere out there, someone is quietly going through a moment just like that right now. By the way, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. I always read them. And if this story meant something to you, one small action from you can help it reach someone who truly needs it. Subscribing, liking, or sharing this video isn't just support for the channel, it can help another person hear a story that changes the way they see their own life. Sometimes the person who spreads hope becomes the real hero of the story. Maybe today, that person is you.